Now, for a deeper analysis of the direction a Moon Jae-in presidency might take the country over the next 5 years, we are joined in the studio by Professor James Kim of the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Thank you ever so much for joining us at this early hour of the morning, James.
Thanks for having me.
So I'd like to focus on a few domestic and international issues that will be at the forefront of people's minds now that Moon Jae-in is going to be the next president of South Korea. Firstly, people are seeing Moon's win as an impressive feat, especially considering the margin of his victory, as there were two other liberals in the running this time around. Does this kind of victory give him a solid mandate to push forward with his agenda?
I think it's questionable at this point whether he really has a mandate, given that it's under 50% of the total vote that he could have obtained. He will make a case for this, but you can bet that the opposition will make this an issue in the days ahead.
Yeah, because he currently has around 42%, so that's well less than 50% that people are going to bring up, I'm sure. Now, Moon is going to tone down the tough talk with North Korea, at least compared to the previous administration we've seen here in South Korea. How do you see this affecting inter-Korean relations, and should we expect North Korea to tone down its rhetoric and also stop conducting so many provocations under a Moon Jae-in presidency?
It's not clear at the moment. He's walked back on some of his comments that he made during the primaries to moderate his tone. Maybe he was pandering to the moderate votes and this was part of the political campaign, or maybe this is his actual policy. We'll have to wait and see. But he hinted the willingness to work with the United States and the Trump administration on the maximum pressure and engagement approach. Now, to what extent he is willing to cooperate with the U.S. on the maximum pressure side of this equation, that I think we need to see how the relationship develops between Mr. Moon and President Trump.
Yes, so on that then, how do you think this dynamic is going to be between Moon and President Trump? Because it's going to be very interesting. Trump, of course, has built up this solid personal relationship with the leaders of Japan and China within the first few months of his presidency. And ideologically speaking, you could say Moon and Trump are pretty far apart on a number of issues. But do you think Moon and Trump can compromise on those big issues affecting both countries? Because, of course, both are essential partners to each other to curb North Korea's military ambitions.
Well, we've already seen how the two different leaders that preceded Mr. Moon has dealt with President Trump. And I'm talking in particular about Prime Minister Abe and President Xi Jinping. They both took a very similar approach in providing some kind of a carrot in the form of economic boon for the United States, promising jobs and investments in the U.S. On the other side, on the security side, they've been a little bit less clear as to what they would like to contribute on that side of the equation. Now, it really depends on how Mr. Moon plays this in his first meeting with President Trump, whether it will be before the July G20 meeting in Hamburg, or if it's going to be the G20 meeting in Hamburg, and how he will handle that first handshake with President Trump. I think we'll have to see what the chemistry is like between those two. But you're right, history suggests that a conservative administration in Washington, along with the progressive administration in Seoul, can be a little rocky, but we fared out fairly okay under the Roh Moo-hyun administration. A lot got done during that time, so I don't expect this to be that bad at the end of the day.
Yeah, so the G20 summit in Hamburg, that's coming up in July.
Right, early July.
Right, so we don't really expect a face-to-face one-on-one summit before that time, considering there's only 2 months.
You never know.
Right.
Mr. Moon, there's some rumors that he's suggesting maybe there's a possibility of a summit in June even, but again, it depends whether he has the right people in place to engage in some very productive discussions with President Trump, whether he has the personnel at the working level to take take it to the next, to take it to the next step. Again, we don't know. There are a lot of questions here because we've never been in this situation where we didn't have a transition period for the new personnel coming in.
Absolutely, and of course, President Moon is going to have the task of getting all his ministers and Prime Minister in place and confirmed by the National Assembly as well. Now, another key diplomatic relationship is the one with Japan. We are hearing that Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has already sent his congratulations to Moon on his victory and said he's looking forward to sharing some frank opinions with him over the course of the next coming days and weeks. But many in Japan and also here in Korea sense there is going to be a renewed diplomatic friction between the two countries now, particularly over historical issues. How do you see this playing out?
Well, during the campaign, the Comfort Women Agreement issue came up, and Mr. Moon has suggested that this issue needs to be revisited and reviewed. Japan's position on this is that the agreement is an agreement and that the terms of the agreement must be followed through. There could be friction over this particular issue. Again, we don't know. It really depends on how Mr. Moon plays his cards here, and whether Mr. Abe decides to use the history issue to rally potentially public support in Japan behind his initiative on constitutional reform. So again, these are some unknowns at this moment. We don't know what the intentions are in Tokyo and Seoul over this matter. We'll have to wait and see.
Okay, and I'd like to just one final question on national security. THAAD and the deployment of the US missile defense system has been a huge topic here. All the candidates had their say on this particular highly sensitive issue. How do you think President Moon is going to deal with this, since the system is essentially already there, it's partially operational? What do you think he's going to do?
Well, before President Trump's tweet on this particular issue that South Korea needs to pay for this deployment, I was going to say that the batteries are here, the agreement is in place, and both parties have obligations to uphold the terms of the SOFA agreement on this issue. And the terms is that the United States puts most of the bill. South Korea takes care of the land and any kind of auxiliary facilities and support that this battery needs. And there wasn't supposed to be any additional charge on top of that. So does President Trump want to renegotiate the SOFA agreement on this issue? Again, if so, this is going to take some time, and I'm not sure that it's going to get resolved in the next few months. But the batteries are here at the moment, and the agreement that's in place to fund those batteries is as far as we're concerned legally, that it's still very much valid, and both parties are obligated to uphold their end of the agreement.
Well, yeah, it was certainly a curveball that President Trump threw South Korea's way a couple of weeks ago, so we're going to have to see how that all plays out. But Professor Kim, thank you ever so much for your insights and staying with us so late into the night. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me here.
Thank you.